All right. I'm so excited to get to talk to you two. Max was he and I came into contact together when I sent out a press release, and he responded to it, and I appreciate that. He is a licensed clinical social worker and a mental health advocate, and responded to the description of this solo show that I'm performing in, based on the life of Marcia A. Richard. And Marcia A. Richard is the source of this solo show that I'm going to be doing down at Metropolitan Playhouse. She and I did an interview together, and this show is extracted from that interview. It was a long interview, a lot of talking. And the show is only about 20 to 30 minutes. So, anyway, I'm introducing them to each other today so that we can so that we can have this platform to let you know more about Marcia, her journey, about mental health and advocacy, and all things mental health and wellness surrounding this show. So I'm going to hand the virtual mic over to Max and ask him to guide our conversation today.
Okay. Well, thank you for that lovely introduction. It's so true. So everyone, it is Mental Health Awareness Month. So all these press releases go out, and I'm a blogger, so I get a lot of press releases, and I not all of them are, let's just say, well, how do I say it? They don't always evolve into anything. I'll respond back. I'll say, hey, I'm Max. I'm hear more about this, and I don't really get a lot of responses, or if I do, they seem automated and cold. But there was something about this press release that seemed different, something very, very close to home, the proximity wise. It was in New York City, New York, and something about the message seemed very, very personal to me, and it resonated with a lot of my work. So I responded back, and then this that we're here. So I think that's fabulous. And as a mental health advocate, I'm always looking around for stories that really ignite the conversation around mental health, and really look at like what we can do as a community to get the word out, each and every one of us. So that's why we're here today, and I'd love to hear more about how this really evolved from your work, Marcia, and in terms of the book. You put out a book, is that true?
Yes.
Can you talk about what incited you to write, to get your word out? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, um, I've always been a ham. I love theater. I love the stage. If you say camera, it's action for me. So, being that I had so much trauma, that was the one place that I felt safe and I knew that I could be free in. And so, from an early age, that's the only place that I really, really felt I fit in. And so writing it came naturally because I always loved writing. And once I learned how to spell and read aloud, which was a challenge for me because of my youth, I had been misdiagnosed as a child and was forced into a psych ward. I was forced to take Ritalin. And so I went to school there, but I never was really safe in school. I always got in trouble and I was always returned back to some sort of institution. And so if there was any type of arts, that's what I would do. And I would always excel. So that was something I knew that I had as a gift. And I was always I could create a skit. If we was doing back in the day we would do little hand things and different things, theater. It was always something, a dance group or something. I was always trying to create that anywhere I went, in the institution, wherever, singing. We would have a battle, dance battle. So it was always a place where I knew I can get positive or I can make people see another side of me because I was so labeled as a child and as a young child growing up in the 70s. It was horrible. And so once I started writing, it was bits and pieces here and there. And then when I started using drugs, it became even harder to finish the book. So it was always bits and pieces of different stages in my life. And although I went through so many places and I was homeless by choice so many different times, I always managed to keep the bits and pieces. Even, when I moved around and my stuff was somewhere else for a while, I had to go get it. It would always be there and I had it. So eventually, when I finally got to the full circle of life, it was like my life had changed. Wasn't perfect, but I stopped using crack cocaine. I started working on, staying and figuring out why I kept being chronic relapser. And I also always stood out vocally, whether it was singing or motivational speaking somehow, or at church if they asked me to speak, or anything that I'm given, I always try to manifest something even greater from my artistic side. So God gave me that. And it was a safety net. And so once I decided to get myself together, which I kind of jumped really far from, I didn't give you too much detail. A little suspense never hurts. But when I met Eva, which is community access down in the Lower East Side, I literally came from the shelter right there on 3rd Street. And I had been to that shelter before, but this time I was serious. Wasn't losing my bed, and I wasn't gonna. And I messed up 3 times after that. But I finally got it. And then the lady was like, "You got to go around the corner to community access because if not, I'm not gonna help you." I'm just gonna say that's how she said it. She was a character, but she was something else. But she saved my life. And so her name is Miss Kwanda, and she cussed me out like, if you don't. And I said, okay, ma'am, yes ma'am. And I went around there and I haven't left. They couldn't get rid of me if they tried. And then I had so many different life coaches. But when Linda came along with them dimples, and she was just the cutest thing, but she was so powerful in her humility. Like, I can go to her and felt, when I left her, no matter how I got to her, I would feel so good. No matter what we did, I would leave feeling really good. And then we matched with the artistic side. So that was the gift that God gave me, where he showed me that he would give me strong people who knew me and who would want to know me and get to know me. And then we would be able to be so good together, like a blessing. So that's exactly what we work. We are walking in a blessing right now. Just even talking to you too. So welcome aboard to the blessing.
I couldn't agree more. This is a blessing, and it's a blessing to be here. And aside from that story of resilience and comeback and knowing your strengths and acknowledging your weaknesses, I want to just touch on a literary perspective, how you said there were bits and pieces of your story that sort of stuck with you that you did over time. Because a lot of folks that write on a literature level, like they write about their lived experience, they sit down and just do it. They knock it out, or they sit down and they're like, I'm gonna write a book, and I'm just gonna write, and they sit and they do it. Yours seems to have evolved over a longer period of time.
Right.
And I think that sort of speaks to its authenticity, because if you think about it, when you're writing in the moment and you're writing over time, it's more real. It's more to what happened. It's true to the experience. And I think that's something that I find very noteworthy about what you're saying. It's like you're writing right in the moment. You're writing as you're reflecting, as you're going, almost like they call it like in vivo therapy. How about in vivo autobiography writing, right? You're writing as it's happening almost. And that's there's nothing more healing than that. You're right. Literature and writing is healing. But when you write after the fact and sort of reflect, it's sort of like this, all right, I'm gonna work on it, because you're making an effort to. But you acknowledge that this is gotta be a part of your life almost. Like writing and speaking and doing this is your healing mechanism, and you've been through so much that you need to do it as you're going along. And I think that's very important to acknowledge, because some folks, they can't just sit down and be like, all right, I'm going to feel better right now. They need to feel better over time, because they're going through so much. You can't just have 5 minutes of healing. Some of us need a couple hours every day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So some of us are going through so much where it's like, I can't just speak to one therapist for a couple of weeks. I need to have a therapist and a team around me all the time, because
Absolutely.
there's that much going on that I need to heal from. And I think that that speaks to how much you've been through, and how moving your work is, if I could just say that.
Well, thank you. That was a wonderful observation, and I haven't heard it quite that way. So that was also um, beautiful, because there were days when I wrote pieces when I was literally, my hands were bleeding. Um, they're stained. The I have so many pieces and I still have the original graphs. And it was me and Linda who kept going over and over and over it to get it on paper. And then, but actually, you were right. A lot of the, and I still did it chronologically. I didn't give all the stories because there's short story series coming where I want to make like a book that has 3 short stories in them, but they will always coincide to the book because you're going to remember the dates and the year, and you'll be like, wow, so in that year, so it's going to give my readers a chance to really dig in and go deeper, because it will draw them in, and then there's always a spiritual point at the end, because I'm telling you, God, that's why I know when he said in the word taste and see how good he is, I literally saw God myself in many areas. So nobody can tell me that. And they would think, oh, you were bugging out, you were high. No, I wasn't. Not that time. You know what I'm saying? The high left. That's how powerful it was. Like I was, but I was sober instantly in those instances. Every time he showed up, because it was that powerful. So I want to use the short stories, volume 1, volume 2. This is the first time I'm going to tackle the Roman numbers because I need to know them. I never did, and they're beautiful. And so I'm going to use the Roman numbers to learn them, and also use it as the series. Volume sounds so good in numerous numbers.
Yeah.
And so it's just a Miso wants to say hi, because if he doesn't, he'll start acting up and
Aw,
he's not getting the
that's what they
attention.
do.
So say hi and cut it out, please. He likes to come and sit right there. Okay. So honestly, there's a lot in me still. And between me and Linda, we getting ready to go for it. And I'm grateful for the opportunity. So thank you for your insight as well.
You're welcome. And yes.
Can I make an observation that I've seen in both of you, just in the little time that I known Max, but I definitely have seen this in Marcia, is that writing became a tool in a way of uh, figuring out how you felt about this or just getting it out. And so often I feel like the arts, whether it's performance or writing or visual arts, get minimized. And yet, in my opinion, they're so critical to helping us figure ourselves out. And Marcia's book, which I have to plug Marcia's book,
Please.
right here,
Yeah, me too.
called
Yeah.
Misdiagnosed. And in the book, you get that sense like you're traveling with her through different times and different things are happening at different times. But so often that is how life is. And I do think, Max, when you said, yeah, when you look back on it, it's a little different because you have space between it. Because I wrote a solo show about my life, but I was reflecting back on things. And so I had space and maturity and life experience in a different way than I had at the time. And so it does, I do think it makes a difference. And there's something that clearly must offer healing by just writing it down.
I agree. No, I agree. And
Awesome.
when I was very sick, um, I was told to write. I was advised to write, not by a therapist, but someone that was living with me and experiencing the trauma with me, trying to
Mhm.
support me. She said, "Write, Max, write it all down." But while I was writing, it was more of a just like a journal at the time. And I went back later and I looked at that, and I sort of I was able to look at and really see, wow, look at those delusions, look at this, look at that, look at that. As a therapist later on, as I got my training, I saw it more and more. But when I started getting into writing, I noticed when I read different autobiographies that, especially with people with lived experience with a mental health disorder, there are a couple of different types of not to break it down succinctly, but you have the writing that sounds like it's it's good writing, but it doesn't necessarily reflect the experience well. Like it writes well, but it doesn't necessarily describe what's happening. And then you have the writing that's not such great writing, but it sounds like actually the person is still very much struggling and not healed. You know what I mean? Sure, we
I
never,
do.
and then there's all the ranges in between. And I'm wondering, how you were able to rise above that dichotomy and really put together something that was more, you know, a better package, a better package of writing, clearer writing and writing that really reflected what you were doing.
Well, see, that's the thing. I have a portfolio here.
Ah.
All right. Let me get it for you. I just want to show you some of it. And it's ramstack packed with little notes and different things. Like I'm talking about, I could be anywhere and something will come back. And I'll be like, boom, boom, boom. I'll write it down on a little piece of paper. I'll stick it in here. And then I've always been working on my short stories, but it still had to come after the first book. So everything in here is, all I have to do is look at one word and I'll remember the incident with the cab, like cabs. I had 2 cab incidents. One was all right. I still had to run across the highway. But the second one was horrible and I still had to run across the highway. But the transition of them both still give God the glory. And they're not cute stories. They're not sweet story. One of them, my butt was hanging out when I ran across the highway. Okay, I'm talking about the FDR Drive right over here. Okay, so that's just an example of how the gift that God gave me, like when I was little, what really was going on. I was being sexually abused by a family member and friends. And it was the 70s and they were teenagers and I was a baby. And I was when I had my first drink, and God knows what else was in the drinks. And that was where there was some sexual abuse as well. And it was continuous. And it affected me because I was like 4 or 5, So it was hard because then I became sexually active. I wasn't a baby anymore. Simple as that. I was a 4-year-old in a 16, 18-year-old body that could read you as well. Because God always gave me something. I don't know why. So I was grateful once I figured it out, but it was always making me a target. And I was always in a press. And I started to believe now that's because he was trying to bust a diamond or a pearl out of me somewhere along the line. And that's where the books and the story and the creativity and the ability to fit in anywhere. I can go to another country, don't speak their language, and be like, we're friends for years. I go to the beach by myself and I always make friends. By the time I'm there, I got I'm eating, people are cooking, whatever, because of the energy. But at the same time, it caused a lot of trauma. Before I could understand what it really was, I thought it was bad because it was always causing me trauma, the attention that I was getting. So now I learned that I can channel it. And I can use it. That's why the job I have, although I have been having some hard time, I just got straightened out yesterday at church. Sure. I got straightened out, right? So I'm ready to go back tomorrow, straighten out, because I've been there almost 7 years. So that's a testament. And I've always been able to get a job. I had good jobs, but I was a chronic relapser because I wasn't dealing and I wasn't processing the gift that God gave me to deal with the issue, the tool. Like she spoke out.
You couldn't have said that better, especially the diamond metaphor, because writing isn't something that you just. It's not McDonald's, right? I'm pointing back here because it's McDonald's. Why I'm
fast food.
Not putting fast food. Real literature is not fast food. like the diamond, it takes time, it takes the energy you're talking about. It takes both of those things to really craft something. And like you're saying, you see it, but you weren't quick, you weren't hasty with putting this together. And a lot of writing that's autobiographical is just put together, it's thrown together. They hire someone to write it, or they write it, or they don't take the energy to edit it, or they don't do this, or they don't do that. You really took your time as a craftswoman and said, this is what I'm doing. This is the energy I need. I'm not going to wait until it's all out there and I've processed it all, and we'll look at it when it's done. And I think that's why it seems so complete.
Yeah. That's the full
What's
circle.
wonderful, one of the things I was thinking about writing too is that it's interesting that that's the medium that God chose to communicate with us, his creation.
Yeah.
He used all these different people, 66 different people, to script what he wanted to say. But behind each person's message was a desire to be close. And I feel like when that's the impetus, you want to be understood, or you want to be heard by the reader, or you want to somehow have some level of closeness with the reader. They get that when they're reading it, because there's something about the writing that moves you. And so you think, oh, this is interesting. Or, you feel understood, or even if you don't exactly relate to everything, you are moved in some way. And I think that's why we are probably moved to write when we're in trouble, And
I couldn't agree more. Writing is connection, it's language. It puts one person in conversation with another. I know when I was very sick, all I was trying to do was communicate with the people around me like I would in my everyday life if I was well. But I couldn't, because I was floridly psychotic. No one knew what I was talking about. And yet still, I was trying to communicate. And I think that comes out in my writing and in a lot of our writing, where when we're not feeling well and we're not relating well with others, we're still trying, we're still human. So we're still there trying, but it's not working. So when we heal and we're able to really put together the other end of that message, I think it resonates more clearly because it's more complete, like your writing, and like your experience. So I think that's so amazing. But I'd love to hear more about this relationship right here between the two of you, and how that sort of created this new phase of the work and of what's going on now.
Well, I can say this much. Marcia calls me a life coach, but I was actually a career specialist when we met. But using the term life coach feels so apt in a way, because when I would help people with trying to find work for them, I do think it's so important to use your life to match yourself with work that's going to make you feel valued, work that's going to make you feel like you have something to contribute. And so when she and I met at Community Access, she was already on fire. So I was just like, oh, see, I can work with this, because, there are a lot of different stages. People can be contemplating working. They can be at the beginning of thinking about, maybe I should try. And that can go on for a year before they actually will go to an interview. But Marcia came in clear. Whatever Miss Kwanda said at the shelter, she sent her in there ready to work. So so we just, she even got, the first job she got was working for like AM News or something like that. She was distributing these newspapers.
Yes.
And I used to have to go and meet with clients when they were working. And so I went there a couple of times and met her for coffee, and I just watched her. And people respond to that energy, because most people, like, I know I don't take anything from anybody on the streets in Manhattan when they try to give you whatever. I don't care, the discount, whatever. Let me come to you. But
Okay.
Marcia had so much energy and had something to, she wasn't just offering people the little circular or the little paper, but she was offering them a piece of her heart, a little encouragement, a little boost, a little something. And then, she was like, hey,
I was singing and everything.
and I was like, you know what? Give me some papers. If I didn't know her, I would have taken two or three. But it's I think that speaks to who you've always been on the inside, probably, even when you were wrongly treated or neglected and there were traumatic events happening. And so I feel like for me, Marcia's story is one that the world should hear about. And so with the Metropolitan Playhouse, the show opens May 18th. They've given me an opportunity to interview someone from the Lower East Side. So I thought, well, I met Marcia on the Lower East Side. She's not living there right now. That's where our relationship started. And so I thought of her. And when I asked her if she'd be willing to be interviewed so I could build a solo show around her, she was enthusiastically yes. So I thought, oh, fabulous. So that's that's where we are now. And so we'll see what the show is like come May 18th. But
Girl, you got this. Yes, you do. And it's the same for me because by the time me and Linda got together, I had at least 4 other people, and they all were wonderful. So it was like stages in my life where God said, okay, each one of them helped me with one level that I needed to conquer. Because when I came there now, my teeth was missing. Came from a hard crack move. That was it for me. I learned my lesson hard. Okay, I literally came out by the skin of my teeth. Okay, but God bless the God, because ironically, He saved my life. So once I got to Eva Community Access, it was an on and on and on type of thing. It wasn't like I was giving up. But I told you about those 3 relapses I had. The first relapse I had, I don't know, I felt like I was a robot. Like I didn't know what I was, but I was scared. So I went back. The second time I had a serious female issue out of the blue. And I had on a skirt with thong. So I was not prepared. Then the third time the incident happened that I didn't know I got a warrant from, right? So I'm doing good. It's like 3 months. I done got out the shelter. I had an apartment up in the Bronx. I'm working out. I'm sober. I'm not doing nothing, And out of the blue, I find out I have a warrant. So I turned myself in, which was good because had they caught me, I probably would have did more time. So I left Eva to do the 8 months, did the 8 months. At that time, I was with another worker. Came back like nothing changed. And the last time I went to jail, I literally went sober. So that was something that I needed to do. It was part of the reason of how He wanted to solidify what He was doing over my life. He wanted me to see what I had done for over almost 30 years. Okay. So that helped. So I got home, went right back to Eva, and I was ready to work. Like she said, I got the job, and it was the coldest months, December, January, February. And I'm talking about I'm singing, I'm doing the thing. You hear me? But it was hard work. I was right there on 96th Street. So you got 4 entries. You got the hill, and they bundles before you open them up. They heavy. And there was days when I would cry because like I lost it. I slid halfway down the hill. The papers was all the way down the hill, but I didn't give up. Do you know Christmas came and they were giving me gifts? I still have gifts now that I got for people who just met me. Then I met people who knew me from the past, and it was like seeing a ghost because they know how cracked out I was. So not to overdo it, I just want to say that when Linda came into my life, she was my launching pad. Like she said, I was on fire, but everything that's on fire, you need a safe surface to launch that fire if it's for the right reasons, right? You don't just willy-nilly. So she was my launching pad, and I took off, and I haven't looked back, only to say, okay, thank you, Lord, and I'm ready to go. To remember, okay, yeah, I remember that I ain't doing that again, because everything, you use everything. My job, literally, I work for the city. I have 5 felonies. Now, you know, I'm horrible on paper. People look at my KP like, is she in the building? Like, you know, but by God's grace, they were looking for people like me. They were looking for us as peers because they needed us on the line for the first time. And so I was part of the first. I done been to the UN. I done met de Blasio's wife. I done been all over for either community access or my job. And so when it gets hard, that's what I think about. My launching pad, what he put inside of me. And nothing is going to be easy. That's how you know you on to something. So thank you for allowing me to share that with you.
Oh my God.
And of course, my Linda.
You know, I have to let you all know, this is because this is a personal account. It's going to run out in about 2 minutes.
Okay.
May I just say that that I think the world needs authentic people and authentic peers more than ever, because in writing, like I said, you either get that like, now I'm healed, everything was so easy, all I had to do was this, but like stories that capture over time struggle, relapse, trying again, starting over. That's the real story of mental health, okay, and mental illness, because I know that I've had lots of failures and lots of successes, and you don't hear enough about that. You don't hear enough about the struggle, the work like you described. So I think that's why we're here celebrating your work, is because it's like, here's an authentic story that matches the experience that people can actually look at and say, oh, that's what it's like, you know. And there's so many misrepresentations of mental health and mental illness and whatever you want to call it that are polluting the literature world and creating a large misunderstanding about what people have to do to heal. So thank you. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you so much, Max. This is gonna run out in less than a minute, but thank you so much, Marcia. And I'm excited for the world to get to know you.
Yes,
and you too, Max.
You know, I always say, if you mess with me, you stuck with me. I'm taking you right with me. So, Max, get ready. We launching.
All right.
All right.
Launch. Cheers to our launch, to your launch.